What if I told you that even Duolingo agrees that some parts of their app have you, well, let me use their words here, not learning well? Ooh, and yet those parts of the app are still there, and you're probably still using them. Why, and more importantly, what should you actually focus on to make progress in 2025?
I'm currently out front of Duolingo headquarters in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The owl kept threatening me, so I came here to seek vengeance. If you don't know who I am, my name is Edinger, and for better or for worse, I'm quite well known for Duolingo. I've got an over 8-year streak. I learned German, currently learning Spanish, but let's be honest, the app is not the same as it used to be. Some parts of it are so much better, and other parts are depressingly worse. It led me to ask the obvious question, is Duolingo still worth using in 2025 to learn any sort of language? Let's head back to my studio to talk the good, the bad, and the owlgly. Sorry for that pun, let's go.
As Duolingo is the most popular tool in the language learning space, it's become really easy to dunk on for views. But a lot of the criticism isn't unwarranted. If you're learning Spanish or French or pay to use the app, then you get a really good product. But otherwise, things can get a bit shaky. That's because Duolingo focuses most of its resources on the courses that bring it the most users and revenue. Spanish, English, French, German. These languages get the best updates, the most engaging stories, the highest quality learning paths. So if you're learning one of these, you're in luck. But if you're tackling something like Finnish, for instance, you might reach the end of this video and see all the shiny new features I'm talking about, and you might think,
Mies syö omenan.
so what is the deal with Duolingo in 2025? Well, in this video, I'll be sharing my insider tips to hack the leagues and maximize your learning potential, and I'm gonna be revealing my secret tip for how you can unlock the features of Duolingo Max, all for free without leaving the app. Plus, we'll look into what Duolingo themselves admit is not worth your time, and I'll share some insight from an interview with the CEO that I found fascinating that might just change how you see the app forever. If you're anything like me, you might find some nights that it's 11:30 p.m. and you ashamedly open your Duolingo app just to do a quick lesson to continue your streak. It happens. It happens to the best of us. Hey, it's happened to me before when I'm out in the club and I'm like, hold on guys, it's streak time. I'm not really learning a lot this way. The easiest way I found to avoid this and to actually learn a lot is to just start your Duolingo lesson in the morning. If you already have something in your morning routine that you enjoy doing daily, like for instance, brewing a nice cup of coffee, well, you can stack the habit of doing Duolingo on top of that. Start it off early, you feel good about it, it's a good plan. But the biggest tip I can give you for how to get the most out of Duolingo, which you might find annoying, is you just gotta pay attention to what the app is trying to get you to do. You know those monthly quests? Actively try and complete them every month. For the most part, in order to do that, you're going to end up needing at least 15 minutes of learning on the app a day. The daily quests are designed in a clever staircasing pattern to trick your brain into spending more time learning. It's similar to a just one more turn mindset in games like Sid Meier's Civilization. Excited for the new one. Or short form video. You've got enough time for one more video, right? It's 20 minutes now. You could do that, but with language learning. Here's how the staircasing in Duolingo works. The whole concept of the streak is to get you to complete at least one lesson per day. That's your foot in the door. Opened the app, completed a lesson, you're done. Well, the easiest daily quest might require you to complete one more lesson, maybe 2, maybe 3, depending on where you are. But then the second daily quest, coincidentally, needs one more than the first daily quest. And then after you finish that one, you probably guessed, the third daily quest requires just a little bit more time. Actively trying to complete these daily quests has a result of getting you to make actual progress in your path by tricking your brain into doing what it perceives as the bare minimum. You're already here, might as well do one more. Once you've done all 3 daily quests, you get a 3 times multiplier for a limited time afterwards to boost your XP. So if you're any bit competitive at all, you'll probably stay on the app even longer, learning even more. I'll reveal the current meta for the leagues towards the end of the video, as that's more for super engaged learners. So much of my recent experience with using Duolingo has been of the mindset, I might as well do more, which is exactly the reason why I felt like I have been learning more recently. Because I have. It's a positive thought spiral. Feeling like you can actively sense your progression causes you to be excited about learning, which in turn causes you to sense further progression. It's all good, man. Saul Goodman. Basically, set yourself the goal of just spending 5 minutes in the app, but let the app staircase you into doing more. You might find the quests get quite difficult, like this one, which starts you off with 4 lessons at a minimum, then 3+, then 6. But if you don't end up completing these, their algorithm eases up, and it works with you to get you to spend at least a little bit more time than you spent the day before. In this way, it's a great way of competing with yourself, so you always win. Now, I do hate when a YouTuber will bury the answer that most viewers are looking for towards the end of the video. So now I want to talk about the parts of the app that aren't really worth your time that I mentioned in the intro, as there's quite a few. The games on the left and the right of the path are useless. I never engage with them, they aren't required, and from my experience, exist solely as a way to get users to spend their in-game currency and give Duolingo more real money, I guess. They are designed in a way that's practically impossible to do without spending gems, and I find that so transparent that I just don't think it's worth engaging with. And you could say, hey man, it's just your opinion. I'm pretty good at them. It's not my opinion, actually. It's the company's as well. The CEO has spoken about how inspired he was by Candy Crush, a game notorious for programming impossible levels in so that you spend more money. So I think I'd rather focus on progressing down the path. Even Duolingo themselves have mentioned that they rank these games as low in their time spent learning well metric. Half as well, in fact. According to their own blog post, they say, once we looked at how a learner was spending their 15 minutes a day, we realized not all learning time is equal. What they did realize was there are two types of lessons you can do. A path lesson, which is any lesson node down the path, which includes personalized practice, stories, and unit review, and everything else. That means practice hub exercises, legendary side quests, match madness, and ramp-up challenges. Now, why does this matter? Well, according to their own metric that they have right here, it turns out that if you want to make sure your time is spent learning well using their app, the formula is minutes learning on the path plus minutes learning everything else divided by 2. Now, I don't think you need a math degree to realize dividing something by 2 means it's half as effective, specifically when it comes to this formula. So maybe the next time you're thinking, ooh, let me gold this lesson, or make it legendary, or use the practice tab, or try a ramp-up challenge, just know that even Duolingo thinks your time would be better spent elsewhere. The path, which is already full of repetition and has all that practice built in. Duolingo in general is already quite slow if you think about it. We will discuss later in the video how that somehow comes out to be a strength of it, but if you know it's already this slow, why would you choose to do things in the app that are known to be half as effective? You wouldn't, right? Well, provided you're also following my next tips, at least. The one tip that I've got that has pretty much remained the same every single year I tell to most friends I introduce to the app is always, always, always say each prompt aloud and each answer aloud. This isn't just a way for you to practice pronouncing things in your target language, but it's also one of the best ways of reinforcing specific sentence structures into your memory. A lot of times I'll have an exercise where right after I finish it and I repeat the prompt and the response aloud, the next exercise is a hard one where I have to type out from memory what I just said aloud. This makes recall a lot easier, and it's great for another feeling of a quick win. Now, if you've ever seen any of my other Duolingo videos, you'll probably know of the tip that I popularized of making sure you have 4 bubbles left over just to make sure that your answer is right. Well, bad news, chaps. As of pretty much the last week, this is no longer the case for me anymore. I'm seeing 1 bubble left, 2, 3, sometimes 4. So the 4 bubble tip doesn't work as much as it used to, but I'd love to know if anyone else has experienced this change recently. I swear to God, I just wrote this part of the script and I was like, yeah, the 4 thing, it's still working, always 4 bubbles. And then literally the next day I was like, no! It was just an easy little hack. But hey, if you'd watched my videos last year, at least you would have had a year of using that cool hack. Duolingo's style of teaching you grammar through repetition rather than outright telling you can be frustrating at times, especially when you're up against a certain lesson and you're confused why you keep getting things wrong. My tip for this at the moment is to just screenshot your screen and ask ChatGPT to explain why you were wrong. It's incredibly effective. I do know that a lot of people still have very strong aversions to AI for many reasons, so I can only speak from my personal experience that, especially for learning Spanish, asking incredibly specific questions to ChatGPT has been a game changer. Before this, you'd have to ask Google and sift through random forum results trying to find very specific answers, but from my experience, ChatGPT just gets it right these days. Is it right 100% of the time? Absolutely not. But neither are a lot of methods these days. Also, for those of you on an iPhone 15 Pro or above with Apple Intelligence, here's an extra tip. When you get something wrong, just activate Siri by holding down the power button on the right of the phone and say, ChatGPT, why is this wrong? Or in my case, I asked, why was it creía instead of creí? And then you can get an answer all without leaving the Duolingo app. You do need to make sure that you have enabled ChatGPT in your Apple Intelligence settings beforehand, but this is an incredibly useful implementation of AI, at least compared to Siri, which is setting the bar on the ground. I have a lot of tips like this on how to actually use AI effectively, which hopefully will come in a video in the future at some point, especially because I feel like it's just so easy to get like views off of dunking on AI, and I'm like, yeah, AI is actually really bad in many ways, but boy, there are some really useful ways of using it if you know how. Speaking of AI though, Duolingo have been investing heavily into AI as opposed to their employees, especially for the extra paid version Duolingo Max. Let's talk about the state of affairs for all the versions of Duolingo as of 2025 as things have changed. You've got the free tier, the super tier, and the max tier. The free tier these days is more freemium, meaning you can still learn the language of your choice for free, but they do slap you with advertisements after every lesson. I grew up with not a lot of money, so for me, I wouldn't care how many ads you threw at me. I'd hate the brands advertising to me, I'd hate you for putting them in my face, and I still wouldn't pay to remove the ads because I could still get the service for free for the most part. Duolingo now, though, is a very different beast to when I had started. Free used to be a standard thing, and paying for Duolingo Plus, now called Super Duolingo, just gave you a small assortment of perks that I said in my first review of the app like 6 years ago was not worth it. How times have changed. From what I've seen in the last couple months, there's been quite a lot of backlash from people online that are in the free tier because they've just noticed Duolingo has removed the ability to regain hearts by doing the practice tab, meaning the only way of actually learning the language for free, as they advertise as their whole mission statement, well, it would be to wait 5 hours to get another one go. Or, very conveniently, you could just give them some money. You could just give us some money and upgrade to the Super Duolingo plan. That's not free though, is it? Like, I feel like by having the system where the hearts are there, yes, it's annoying, but if you can practice to get them back, I'm like, okay, I can swallow that pill. But taking that away is like, just so greedy. It's grim. Rather than offering a good product and offering bonuses for those who pay, Duolingo severely worsens their product that is the free tier, so that the only good product these days is essentially Super Duolingo. The days of good companies doing good things has never existed. But at least, it was nice when they pretended for a bit. So Super Duolingo is the tier that I currently use. There are no hearts, there are no ads, you can access mostly everything, and you can do legendary runs of the exercises, even if it is a bit of a repetitive waste of time, as we've already discussed. All these things used to be in the free tier, but here we are, in shitification at its finest. If you do have friends or family, that's nice. Maybe try roping them all in to pay for the family Duolingo plan together, because if you do get a lot of people in there, it works out to roughly £1.24 per month per person. That's actually a pretty good value, I'd say, especially as I don't think, in my situation, that my partner's mom has noticed I've been freebooting off the family plan for a while and she has not received any money from me. So find yourself a nice mom. Thanks, Evelyn. Now, Heather's mom did come to me and ask at one point, Evan, should we upgrade the family plan to Duolingo Max? My answer was, nah, not really. As incredibly cool as the AI video chat feature is that is locked behind the Max tier now, which I have made a video about above, the price they're asking for it, which is pretty much double the super tier, it makes it just not worth it to me, especially considering how the only other thing you currently get with the Max tier is Explain My Answer, which they removed the comment sections to feign value for, and as I already explained, is very free and easy to do outside of the app. Also, as someone who already pays for the advanced ChatGPT models, I'm not interested in paying for another implementation of something I already have that's also higher quality. I will say I've seen some complaints from super tier users that they keep seeing ads for Max all the time within their path, which is ironic considering they're paying to remove ads. I guess it's like Apple TV. You're not getting outside ads, just ads for Apple, I suppose. I don't see any of those, but that's because I'm not the one who started my Duolingo family and who holds the Duolingo credit card. Heather's mom sees those ads, and the rest of us in the family, we just get to enjoy a better and cleaner product. How nice. All right, you guys still with me? Because here's where it gets saucy. One of the most common criticisms of Duolingo lately is that its focus on gamification, streaks, leaderboards, XP, comes at an expense of real learning. And some language learning elitists believe this makes the app more of a game for dopamine release than an actual viable tool for language learning. And you know what? I do actually agree, but for a reason I don't think you'll expect. The truth of the matter is, Duolingo is focusing most of its efforts on gamification and engagement, and learning a language on Duolingo is slower than many other tools available. And you can view this as a weakness of the app, or you can see it for what it is. Somehow, all part of the plan. There was a really interesting interview that The Verge did with Duolingo CEO Louis von Ahn a couple months back that I read, and I'll link in the description if you're interested. I want to pull out a snippet of it that I think sums up this perceived weakness well. The interviewer asks Louis, the CEO of Duolingo, do you think there's a conflict between gamification and engagement, the things you're historically successful at, and education? The CEO responds, yes, there is. How can he manage that conflict? Very easily, always go with engagement over education. But his next response was the one that really got me. He says, it does not matter how effective you are, you can't teach somebody who's not there. That's such a fascinating response. I came off really American. Fascinating. That was a fascinating response. I just think that one line sums up the app so succinctly. You could make the most efficient way of learning a language imaginable, but if it's not sticky, if users constantly join and leave from frustration or maybe being too busy or keep forgetting, your method isn't the most useful to the most people. The best way of starting and maintaining positive habits is removing as many barriers as possible. If I knew that reading a very specific paperback book was the most efficient way of learning a language, that would require me to buy a book, take it with me on the train or to work, be willing to open it, read it wherever, and persevere through both slow, difficult parts of the book, as well as quick, less engaging parts. The graph of my knowledge using the book might look like this. The graph of Duolingo learning, meanwhile, would look a bit more like this. It's a very low slope and it's continuous. But this perceived difference is probably the biggest reason for most anti-Duolingo sentiment in language learning forums online. It's just so transparent. If you are really keen to learn a language, let's say you've already got some under your belt and you had a very large amount of self-discipline, you'd probably look at Duolingo and be like, what? It's a huge waste of time. It's so much faster doing it a different way. But if you were someone interested in learning a language with some time to spare who also tried this faster method, you might not make time for that as regularly, as the barriers might be too great. And though you might make initial gains outpacing Duolingo by far, you have a higher chance of giving up and never getting towards the end anyway, whatever the end may be. Consistent small growth is going to be way more effective long-term than sporadic large growth when you're feeling it, especially in terms of habit forming. This is probably why a common tip online is to start with Duolingo to get a handle on the basics and to build that habit, and then transition into a more effective, much quicker strategy. Why do some people think they're above pop music? Pop literally stands for popular. Well, it's because it's made so that the most amount of people can enjoy it. Doesn't mean that it's bad, it just means that it's best for most. Duolingo's strategy here is to make an app for learning a language that's the best for most people. There are a lot of people that might find it ineffective because it is so slow, and their brains are wired to be like, no, actually, I know I can do it faster another way. But that does not mean that Duolingo is ineffective. It just means that it is chosen at this path to be effective for the larger majority of people. Which do you think is more effective? Radically changing your diet and expecting yourself to maintain this new lifestyle long-term, or slowly improving your diet over time? Sure, it'd be faster to hit your goals changing your lifestyle immediately. I'll go to the gym every day. I'll stop eating all this junk food, but that's so much more difficult to stick with. It's too much of a paradigm shift, and you might find after a while, you just slip back into your negative habits. By taking it slow, you're building sustainable habits, ones that don't feel like a complete shock to your system, and small, incremental changes are easier to maintain because they're not overwhelming. Over time, these changes compound, and before you know it, you've reached your goals without burning out. As it is the new year, a time full of resolutions, I do feel like a lot of times when people try to improve at something, they go searching for the change that they can do that'll have the biggest immediate effect in the shortest amount of time, when in reality, what they should be searching for are the smaller changes they can easily add to what they're already doing that will essentially make showing up second nature. All right, how much information did you want to know about Duolingo before clicking to this video?
Please, sir, I want some more.
More? All right, well, welcome to one of my 50 niches. Thank you, YouTube algorithm. Let's talk about some of the new features that were added in the last year, both the good and the bad. First up, Duolingo Scores. Good. In 2024, Duolingo added a feature called Duolingo Scores, which I really, really like. For me, one of the best features of Duolingo is that feeling you get of progression, to be able to visualize your language learning journey, like on the path. As great as the CEFR is at determining your spot on your journey, these sections are quite broad. Duolingo Scores add a bit more granularity here, so it's easier to see exactly where you are. I'm really excited that I'm so close to a Spanish score of 100, which aligns with the very beginning of the B2 framework in CEFR. So for Spanish Duolingo, that currently goes up to a score of 130. So I'm nearly there. The C1 to C2 level is not available for Spanish on Duolingo, and in reality, I don't know if it ever could be, as C levels I feel are really only going to come from actual immersion, but I'm happy to be proven wrong in the future. I don't think I will be, but here's an analogy. Expecting to achieve C1 or C2 level fluency in a language using any techniques without immersion is sort of like expecting to become a professional chef by memorizing cookbooks. You might know a lot of recipes, you might know how to put some things together, but without any practical practice, it's just kind of all in your head, you know what I mean? You're gonna think you're gonna be a professional chef, and then you're gonna end up showing up in an episode of like Kitchen Nightmares. You can understand how things work and be really confident with being able to use the language, but to get to that C1 and C2, it is, you gotta get immersed, and I don't think anything is really gonna get you there without getting involved. Start using it. Now, French on Duolingo also goes up to a score of B2, which is quite nice, but sadly, German peters out before B2 at all. But this is rumored to be going to B2 later this year, so that's exciting. Other languages? Next feature, one new feature introduced in the last year to a lot of languages across the app are Duolingo Stories. These are great in the beginning. You see, Duolingo Stories are clever, they're humorous, they're memorable, and they're always like right at the same level where you're learning with extra stuff thrown in, so it feels exciting to be able to read and enjoy a story in your target language. I have some examples from a previous story in my other video. You know what's not fun though? Having to do that same story again and again and again. I feel like 1 out of every 4 Duolingo stories in my path is a new one, and the other 75% are just boring repeats of the same exact story I've already heard before. That aside, I do still find the concept of stories very useful. I just hate having to do them more than twice. More than once I was gonna say, but more than twice is just too many times. If I have to listen to the same story of Eddie and Junior going whale watching again, I'm gonna scream. I'm gonna scream. This gets really demotivating as I want to learn new things, but Duolingo doesn't have enough stories to actually fill out the path appropriately. And rather than sensibly spreading them out or cutting the ones out that have been done at least 2 times, they waste your time. To be fair, that would be a huge amount of stories that they need to add to fill out the tree effectively, but, you know, they used to have a lot more stories before they got rid of all the good ones a couple years back that I'm still salty about. That being said, I do still find Duolingo Stories to be very good and effective, especially if you're new to it, but for people in the B1 section, I just think they need to give us an option to skip them rather than make us do the same story again and again. It's just bad design.
Hi, so as a quick note, I just noticed after filming this video that Duolingo have recently allowed you to skip stories. They actually do it automatically if you've done the story too many times. I caught it on a screen recording here. As you can see, as soon as I finished the lesson, it just skipped over the story and let me go to the final lesson. So there you go. They are updating things, and right as I was about to complain about it, they fixed it. So that's happened quite a few times if you've been watching my channel for a while, so hopefully that continues. I predict the future of Duo.
The next new feature we're going to be talking about is Friend Streaks, which are neither good nor bad. They just kind of exist. Duolingo came out with Friend Streaks this past year, which is like a streak that you keep with your friends, like Snapchat. Once you choose your 5 friends, you can't change them out unless one of them misses a day without a streak freeze, which for me, has not once happened. So this feature mostly exists as a way to annoy your 5 friends by telling them that you essentially did your duo earlier in the day than they did. Similar to like when Facebook was early days and they had super likes or throw a sheep, where you could throw a sheep at someone's wall just to annoy them. Really speaking only to millennials here, aren't I? Remember that? Remember that, kids? I used to throw sheep at my friends' walls. It was the height of the internet. And the last big new feature we're gonna be talking about was pretty much just introduced in the last couple weeks, and that is language-only leagues and location-only leagues. Good/bad. The newest feature that's come out literally in the past month is language-only leagues. Rather than be stuck in a league with people learning different languages, now everyone in your league can be learning the same language as you. That makes more sense, right? Don't you hate it when you're learning your language, you're trying to be competitive in your league, and then someone's got like 10K XP every day because he's learning English, and you're like, that's not very fair. Come on, Raul. Well, don't have to worry about it anymore. Now that they've introduced the language-based, everyone's learning the same language as you are, so it feels a bit more fair. But they've also introduced location-based, which I personally think is really weird. It feels like find hot Spanish learners in your area and tell them you learned more Spanish than them this week. But for those of us not dropping 10K XP a day, we've all had those days where it's 11:55 p.m., you're off your face, and you realize, oh my God, my Duolingo streak. Now, for those of you who want to know the current meta for how to get a lesson done as fast as possible to save your streak, there are currently 2, depending on your headspace. If you want the fastest possible option, and your brain is marginally functional at this time, go to the practice tab and select words. After matching 5 words, then select I can't listen right now. Then match the words left over. This whole thing can be done in just under 30 seconds. Great, but it does require a bit more headspace than option 2, which takes about 60 seconds and is also found in the practice tab. It's the speak option. All you gotta do is say 10 sentences in your target language and you're done. This uses so little brain power as you're just repeating words that I'm sure you could do this with your brain in outer space. If you're finding yourself doing either of these regularly though, you should really focus on my first tip of making time for Duo earlier in the day instead. But no judgment, like I said, we've all been there. I wouldn't have a 3,000 day streak without a couple slippy days, but also those days help me by still giving me just a little bit more exposure to the language. So they're important even if they don't make you feel that good about yourself. On the other side of the spectrum, for those of you wanting to know the current meta for how to get that first place in the Diamond League trophy, I've got 2 tips, the first of which might sound counterintuitive. To win the first place Diamond Trophy, do bad. on purpose for a week. Either be just good enough not to be demoted, or do worse and then spend gems to remain in the Diamond League the next week. The next league you'll be placed in will be full of people that also didn't get that much XP the week before. Then go wild. It's sort of like Duolingo hustling. And it's an easy way to win. The current meta of winning Duolingo leagues and such is the first meta since I've started 8 years ago, which actually results in better learning of the language. All you need to do is complete all 3 daily quests every single day to unlock the 3 times multiplier, and then keep doing lessons until it runs out. Lessons? Yeah, I know. Actually learning. Sometimes you're offered to spend gems to extend this multiplier. Do it. If you have a 2 times multiplier from a friend quest that you've been saving, or morning or night chests that you can use, this also extends your 3 times multiplier for the time being. You gotta basically spend more time learning well to actually get points these days. But at least it beats the previous meta of doing the same tired level 1 story over and over. I swear to God, I can recite that level 1 story about Pretty putting salt in her coffee by heart by now. Buenos días, Pretty. Buenos días, mi amor. ¿Dónde están mis llaves? ¿Tus llaves? Sí, necesito ir al trabajo. Pretty, haha, tus llaves están en la mesa. So here we are. Is Duolingo still worth using in 2025? Well, based on everything we've just discussed in this giant video, I'd say yes, if you use it right, if you're in the super tier, and if you're learning one of their top languages. Otherwise, it's hard for me to recommend it because I don't have that much experience with the now inferior product. But from what I can say, from my own personal experience, as considering the fact that I recently had a 20-minute conversation in Spanish with bits of German, neither of which is my, native language, it works for me. And it has worked for me, so it's hard for me, using that metric alone, not to recommend it. So I guess for the time being, I'm gonna keep learning until I one day hit my 10-year streak, God, and then I'll probably switch to French, because why not? Pourquoi no? But as always, if any interesting stuff comes out of the pipeline, any new Duolingo updates, I'll update you here, so be sure to subscribe and whatnot, because I make these Duolingo videos whenever I eventually feel like it. Otherwise, my video on public transit in London versus Berlin is coming. How many times have I hinted this video is coming? A lot. It's just a big video. It's taking a while to edit. And film, honestly. It's all over the place. Anyway, hopefully you'll be seeing that in your homepage on YouTube in the next couple weeks or so. Either way, Happy New Year. I hope that your 2025 is everything that you want it to be and more. And hopefully I'll see you back on my channel next Sunday. Goodbye.
So what brings you to Pittsburgh streets today?
That guy.
That guy. Ah, which way we going?
Straight.
You have a great day.
Yeah, thank you. You as well.
See ya.
Cause trouble.
I will.